Hi there. Welcome to the Easier Said Than Done podcast. I wanted to just let you know that this is a repurposed episode from a conversation I had with Brian Jenny, my partner, on his excellent podcast, Develop Yourself. You guys got to check it out. So, yeah, I repurposed this, few annotations, a little bit more context here and there so that you can listen to it in this channel as well. And I hope you enjoy it. This is a really good episode.
Today on the Develop Yourself podcast, I got my buddy, the other half of Parsity, Zubin, on the show, ex-Google engineer, ex-lawyer, wisdom and bumper sticker creator, perhaps in another lifetime. Today, we're going to talk about something interesting that affects our business and maybe you if you're learning to code. The 3-month to job myth. Do you remember like 2013 explosion of boot camps? In fact, I don't think I've ever told you this story. I went to a coding boot camp and I was hired within 8 weeks, right? And I became one of their big success stories. And they're like, yeah, he got hired in 8 weeks. This is like, what a crazy story, right? And this was like a common thing you'd see online or maybe even read now at some boot camps say, hey, 3 months is all it takes to get hired. That's not reality anymore. So something's happened between now and then. I think people can kind of guess all the different things that have happened. But what's the reality now? Like, what is going on now? What is the realistic timeline for somebody, do you think, to go from zero to software engineer? And is it still possible?
Yeah, so it's absolutely still possible. It happens every day. But, you know, there was a time, and again, I'm just going to go back a little bit in history here because it's interesting, because I've always assumed that what happens in other industries will happen in software engineering, because
Mhm.
ultimately it's a creature of the market, right? So there was a time when lawyers didn't need a license to practice, right? And that was how it was. There was a time when, you know, in American history, when somebody could teach themselves the law, practice law, and then become the president of the United States, namely Abraham Lincoln, right? But that isn't the case anymore. And that
Mhm.
happens in every single industry. So for example, just a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a partner at a law firm, who's an old friend of mine. He's actually one of my first bosses. And he said the industry of law has changed a lot in the last 20 years. Why? When there was strong demand in the 90s,
Mhm.
huge demand, which is when I became a lawyer, in response
Yeah.
to that cultural phenomenon. Over the next 10 years, colleges started to ramp up their legal studies curriculum and their JDs and stuff. And so they started producing more lawyers. And they produce more at the rate the companies can absorb, or the law firms can absorb.
Mhm.
And so you have simple economics 101. Demand is growing, but supply is outstripping demand, right? So what people don't forget is that the concept of the startup as we now know it is almost 30 years old, right? So Google, for example, started in
Mhm.
96, 97. Okay, let's take that as, well, Apple was started in the 70s and all that, but the modern startup with where code is everything, 30
Yeah.
years old. Okay, that's a long time.
That
And
is,
so the
yeah.
market has started to mature.
Mhm.
Going back to your question then, Brian, yes, anyone can do it. 3 months is possibly still possible depending on the market you're in. But when I spoke to algo experts Clement several years ago when I joined Google on his podcast, we talked about this. He said, look, even I did it in 6 months. And I said, yeah, I did it in about 8, but on my fourth effort. So really it took me 5 years. But when I knew what I
Mm.
was doing, it took me 8 months. Right? It's like that Chinese
Okay.
bamboo tree. It takes 5 years to sprout out of the ground and grow 20 feet, but it doesn't sprout out of the ground for the first 3 years or something. So how long did it actually take to grow? Did it take 2 years to grow, or did it take 5? It depends on how you want to look at it, right? Because if you
Yeah.
dig the seed out of the ground, it may never grow. So it's the same thing with this. And so Clement and I were talking about, well, if you do 15 hours a day or 12 hours a day
Mhm.
for 6 months, yeah, you'll get it, because that's the intensity with which you're doing it.
Yeah.
Most people think it doesn't matter how many hours I do. They just think, oh, if I do 3 months, so it's possible. A dead clock will show the right time twice a day.
Twice a day.
But
Yeah.
correct. But the market has changed. And because there's so much information available and so many people are interested in the space, and it's one of the few spaces that still allow you to get six-figure incomes very consistently,
Mhm.
it's driven a whole lot of people into the market, even though demand is huge. And so now employers can get to choose and be a bit more picky.
I like your bamboo analogy because even though that boot camp that I was speaking about, where I got hired in quotes in 8 weeks, I had spent a year before that learning on my own,
Yeah.
right? So even this time, this was 2013, this was like the height,
Yeah.
right? And I'd spent basically a full year teaching myself until I went to this boot camp. And they kind of got me the last step of the way and filled in some core gaps that I was missing, mostly around what we would call market development.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
actually where they
In the
had the
circle,
most help for me,
yeah,
especially, and I
and
think that kind of rings true for what we see with students in inner circle as well.
totally. And you're saying this is 2013?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2013, 2014, something
Put it
like
in
that.
context. 2013 was an age ago in software. So I know it's only 13 years
Crazy.
ago,
Yeah.
12 years ago for us mathematically, but that was, I think, when the iPhone 3 was out. I think that was when App Store 2 was out. I think that was when Instagram was starting out. I think that was when Uber was starting to take off. Airbnb was just about starting. I think that was their second year, and they just about hit 10 paying customers, some rubbishly small number like that.
Wow,
Like
wow.
2013 was the start, right? So let me ask you this. If you did exactly that, now you're a hiring manager and stuff,
Mhm.
and if you today were to see a student or a candidate who had your level of skill in 2013, would they be your only applicant, or would you be likely to find many more people better?
Oh, I mean, I joke about this, but I tell people in Parsley Inner Circle all the time, you're by the end of this program, you're gonna be much more capable than I was at the same stage. You're gonna know
100%.
3 times more than what I knew. You're just gonna be a much better software engineer than I was when I first started off. It took me, another year on the job learning with a
Yeah.
team of people, like, kind of, sitting with me physically there in an office. Just it was like, you're right, it was a whole other lifetime. It feels like a whole other world back then. That world does not exist anymore. And this is the
Yeah.
Bay Area, right? And, like, it's even more shocking that in that market, I was able to sneak in through the back door essentially.
There was so much demand at that point in time, like
Yeah.
so much demand, right? And let's not forget that was also the time when the IT outsourcing thing was starting to really take off. So people were outsourcing to different countries and labor
Mhm.
market, like it was huge, and there just wasn't enough people to do it. And also, Netflix wasn't really a thing in 2013. It was still a video rental store transitioning to digital. It was
I
still
remember
in that
still
formative.
getting the ones in the mail, honestly. That's how wow, I'm really dating myself here. And I'm sure people are hearing this like and the funny thing is I know people will hear this and think, "Oh, it was so much easier back then." And you're right. It was easier. It was not easy. I had a computer science grad also in the same program I was in. It took him a full year to get hired. In fact, most of the people in that boot camp never got the result they wanted.
Yeah,
And I think it's honestly the marketing was really good, right? And we didn't have the data to understand, right? There wasn't so much social media or articles and news articles like 3 months, get a job. You're like,
yeah,
okay, I'm in, right?
yeah.
And then some people did, and you'd be the success story, and most people didn't, right?
No,
And then they'd be left with this idea like, wow, I guess it's just not cut out for me. And that was
yeah.
really sad to see too.
It happened to me so many times, Brian. And the reason I get so angry and I sound like a bitter old man about the 3 months, 5 months, 6 months thing is it cost me 5 years of my life. Like, I'm not joking. It cost
Oof.
me half a decade. Okay. At that point in time, it was 1/7 of my life that it cost me because of the bad marketing, right? I was 35 at the time, and I think that was my second or third affair. I succeeded only when I was 38. And for those 5 years, it was nasty because I just thought I was not smart enough. I was not capable enough. I could never do this. It was too far out of reach. Why? Because the
Yeah.
marketing had produced bad expectations, right? The
Mm.
marketing had made me believe, hey, other people are doing this in 3 months. That's just not true. And they were making me do that, and so they were like, yeah, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to leap into it. Other people have done it. And then every time I would go smack into a window, like face first into a window that I didn't know was there. It was
That is
humiliating.
that is really interesting, and I know we see this, so it shouldn't come as much of a shock. But I guess when I hear somebody like you, ex-lawyer, went to Google and struggling with a lot of the same things,
Oh
what do
my
you
God.
wish you had like known back then, or what was it? With it kind of like, hit that light bulb go off in your head that was like, oh, here's how I need to approach this.
Let me try and find a way to explain it so that people will understand, right? That old saying, we always compare our day zero with somebody else's day 100 is
Hmm.
1000% correct. Okay. Because we only see the end result, the highlight reel from other people, right?
Yeah.
And then we know how they appear on the outside. So, before we started recording, we were talking about, do we ever feel, complete self doubt, or like, we're imposters?
Yep.
And I said, all the time. I feel it all the time. Not in all
Hmm.
parts of my life, in some parts of my life, right? And so what happens is people will see me now on the podcast, or they'll see me at the office or on stage or something, and they'll be like, "Oh, you don't look like you ever worry about oh that." That's not true. That's not true, right? And you're
Yeah.
comparing your insides because you know how you feel on the inside.
Hmm.
You're comparing that with how I appear on the outside, right? And so that's why you feel that way. And it's the same thing. I think you end up comparing with other people, and you don't realize that the most obvious thing is never the only thing that's needed. Let me give you an example. How many people go to the gym because they see somebody ripped on TV, right?
Oh yeah.
Because everyone thinks I need to work out to look like that. The reality
Yeah.
is, if you really want to get that kind of definition, you don't have to work out that much. You need to change your
Some
diet
diets.
so
Yeah,
drastically.
for sure.
It's not the reps in the
Yeah.
gym. You can go to the gym twice a week for
Hmm.
45 minutes at a time and go really hard, and not insanely hard, just hard enough to get, to get hypertrophy to set in. And then after that, it's entirely diet. But
Yep.
it's the gyms and the supplements that get the money because that's how they
Yeah.
market.
Ab
That's
rollers,
correct.
crunches. Yeah.
Remember those? Those late night TV commercials, right?
Yeah. Late night TV shows. Yep. Right.
I've fallen for this because I always assumed the most obviously marketed thing was the trick. And boot camps did the same thing because people will market anything that the consumer believes they want. They will give you what
Yes.
you ask for. That's
Hmm.
what marketing is, right? And what do we do with but why do we call ourselves the anti-boot camp? Why do we say, hey, it's not 3 months, it's 12? Why do we tell people this is gonna be one of the hardest things you ever did? Why have I been saying for 5 years that coding is the easy part? Because everyone's attention is on coding, the shiny thing. But
Hmm.
the real work of climbing that damn mountain has nothing to do with coding. It has to do with this. It has to do with, do you have kids? It has to do with how much time you have. It has to do with your habits. It has to do with your confidence. And so many people have life circumstances that aren't managed. And they're driving the entire way with the handbrake on, and they wonder why they burnt their brakes out on the internet.
Oof, that's a big one. Because yeah, I mean, most of the people we work with, and most people in general go to coding boot camps aren't like 25-year-olds. They're people that are a little older. They likely have a kid or they're starting a family and they're starting to think, what's next, right? What do I want in my career? Do I want to do this? I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking. I was like thinking, do I want to keep doing this for 35 more years? Because I was thinking that's what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And I thought I don't. And when I found coding, like if somebody paid me to do this, this is what I want to do. Now, you and I can get pretty cerebral, and I know that the people listening to are thinking, "Well, how long does it take? Give me a time." And you did. You said 12 months, and I'm sure some people are hearing that. Oh my God, that's a long time. What do you say to that person that thinks, "Wow, 12 months? That's
Okay.
that's too long."
So it's a physics problem. It's not a person problem. How long does it take to go from San Francisco to Los Angeles? Hi, if you want a no BS insight into how to change your career, whether to code or something else, and how to actually get job opportunities in tech, then please subscribe and like. It's no BS because I have zero incentive to mislead you. I just want to help you and give you tons of value so that you will consider working with me to get to your next career. Take a look at the description text below to learn more about the training I offer. Also, you may find my newsletter interesting. I've linked to it in the description. I only mail about 2, maybe 3 times a week, usually around industry trends, things I've learned from other developers, the common habits and pitfalls that I see and might prevent them from actually succeeding, case studies and insights from that. So you'd probably find it quite useful. And hey, if you don't, you can always unsubscribe later. No problems. But I do post content here regularly. And by subscribing and liking and hitting that notification bell, you will get to know when I post new industry insights for you. You'll also know within about 3 seconds if you want to learn more, but at least you won't miss out. Oh, and please follow me on LinkedIn too. I pretty much post there every single day. Just look for my name, Zubin Pratap. All right, so please like and subscribe to this channel, and let's get back to the episode. So it's a physics problem. It's not a person problem. How long does it take to go from San Francisco to Los Angeles?
Like
Can
6 hours.
anyone actually answer? Yeah, but you're making an assumption there.
I am.
What is your assumption?
Traffic,
That you're driving.
that I'm driving, the speed I'm driving at. If I got my kids in the car, I might drive a little slower, 70 times I want to stop for lunch, it's all
Right.
sorts of things.
But the distance between Los Angeles and San Francisco doesn't change whether you're driving, whether you have kids in the car, whether you're taking a bicycle, whether you're flying, whether you're taking a train, whether you're doing it by boat.
This is true. I also assumed I was driving. That's
You
true.
also seem to be driving. And this is the problem with all advice out on the internet. There is a whole bunch of assumptions that have gone into the roadmap that people see on blogs. But how can I give anyone a roadmap until I know what their starting point is, what their ending point is, how they're planning to travel, and how much time are they going to invest in that travel? right?
Yes.
It is a
Oh, the
physics
investment
problem.
part. Yeah, that's a huge
Yeah.
one. Like, how much time do you have?
How much
Because
time
if
do you
you are unemployed, then you have a ton of time. You maybe can get through this in 3 months.
Right. It's a physics problem. So for
Yeah.
5 years, I've been telling people, if you give me 20 hours a week and I remove all the decision making for you, and I tell you exactly what to do in those 20 hours,
Mhm.
and you stick to it, right? It's like I said, it's a physics problem. Speed is distance divided by time, right? Well, it's
Yes.
distance divided by time. Yeah. So
Yep.
it's
Yeah, I don't
basically
know. I'll just
yeah.
trust you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting confused now, but it's a physics problem. There's a formula, right? Distance, time is equal to distance divided by speed. There you go,
Speed. Yeah.
right? Distance divided by speed. So we know what the distance is. Now the question is, how fast can you go?
That's
It's
that's
always
so
been a physics problem.
practical, but
Yeah,
that's like it's funny because that never come and I think it's because we've been conditioned, like many adults, you're especially if you're a little older, if you're outside of school for a few years, your last memory of learning was likely in school. If you
sure.
haven't educated yourself or read like I did, and I was in a really negative state in my life at that point, and my last memory was of school, and I'll never forget this. I got one of those like JavaScript or HTML5 for Dummies
Oh
book.
yeah,
Thought like
yeah.
that
Mhm.
I'd actually like get something out of reading this book. And I read the entire thing and I sat down on my computer with like Notepad plus plus or something. And I'm like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And
No,
I
it
had
was,
no clue how to
you know,
start.
I
It was
went through the
crazy.
same, I went through the same trap. So I wanted to be,
Yeah.
the first idea that I had, like a lot of people, is I wanted to make a mobile app. And I was thinking, oh,
Mm,
Android, that's much more accessible and friendly.
yeah.
So I'll make an Android app. I had never programmed in my life. Right. And so I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's saying, so, well, I built this app. Remember 2013,
Oh my
2014,
God. Yeah.
apps were
Yep.
exploding. Everyone,
Yep.
there should
Yep.
be an app for this. Remember that saying? There should be an app
Hmm.
for this.
There
Okay.
should be an app for this. Yeah.
So Zubin was part of that hype cycle and said, "Oh, I'm going to make an app," and blah blah blah. So I
Hmm.
got a Java book, and back then people don't realize this, but in 2013, YouTube was about 6 years into its maturity cycle. Like it had started in 2005, acquired by Google in 2007. It was only 6 years, really old at scale at that
Like
point in
cat
time.
videos.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it had, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so I tried to look at YouTube. Not a lot. There was some stuff there. Then I did some Coursera, MOOC, blah blah blah. Okay, then I realized, shoot, I cannot build on Android unless understand what a framework is. So I got into what's a framework, what's a library. And was so
Hmm.
confused. None of the words made sense to me. And then
Yep.
I'm like, I can't actually write on Android until I know Java. So then I bought a Java. And what book did I buy? Learn Java in 24 hours. Now there are
Oof.
two very yeah, but this is clever marketing. This is why I keep telling you, all
Yeah.
the folks listening out there, marketers will tell you what you want to hear. I wanted to hear fast and
Hmm.
learn. What I did not know is two things. One is the book assumes that you have some programming knowledge. It'll tell you don't need to, but you do, right? Because you're learning a language and
Of
you need to
course.
understand
Yeah.
how programming generally works.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you won't understand a lot of the words that are in there. And the second thing is it had 24 chapters, which they think should take you an hour to read.
1 hour each. Yep.
And I fell for it.
Assuming you write no code or anything like that. You don't write any code. You just literally read the words on the
And you understand
page.
everything, right?
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
and they're not wrong. You can learn Java in 24 hours if you did that, but that's not how learning works,
Yeah.
right? And so Zubin gave up. That was, I think, experience number two. The first time is HTML,
Okay.
CSS, I found it too
Mhm.
hard, and all that. Anyway, so all this to say that it's a physics problem. That if people ask me today, how long will it take me? I ask two questions. Where do you want to go? Exactly define to me. And most people don't know. Most people are like, oh, I want a developer role. I want a coder role. When I was at Google, I counted 42 different types of technical roles. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's like saying I want to go to Canada, Brian. Okay, great. I'm willing to bet you don't want to go to most of Canada. I'm willing to bet you want to go to
Yeah.
3 places in Canada, maybe seven, but most of Canada you want to miss, right? So you
Yeah.
have the
Good
wrong
point.
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have the wrong destination. So you can't tell me that. Okay. And the number two thing is saying how fast are you going to travel, which is how many hours per week. If I took away all decisions and I give you
Mhm.
the roadmap, you still have to drive that distance or fly that distance or walk, whatever. I don't care. What's your speed? If you can't do the 20 hours per week, you're not going to get to the about 800 to 1200 hours, depending on the person and the starting point and their goal, right? I've calculated this for years now. Why do I say that? Because you can learn to code in about 200 hours, maybe 250. You can
Seems
learn to,
seems reasonable. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
And then you have another problem. You have to get good enough to be professional at it.
Yes.
I can learn to play tennis in a weekend. I am not
Yeah.
going to be playing as a pro athlete, even locally, for at least 7 months, maybe 12. And at my age, probably never.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I
That's
think
what
that's the
keeps
big,
doing it.
and people don't realize this. I spoke with a person you also interviewed on your podcast, Lean Learner
Wow, Elaine
of
Lerner is fantastic.
interviewing.io. Yeah, amazing. I can't wait to release that. But she has cold hard data on this.
Oh,
Interviews have gotten more difficult. Anybody that's done a coding interview in the last 5, 10 years can tell you. If you did a coding interview 10 years ago and you did one last week, you know that they've significantly increased in
100%.
difficulty. Right.
100%.
And then like equipping people now, like through our program or through any program, you're going to have to compete on this market, and I think that's the tough love people need. It's like, yes, maybe it'll take you 12 months, maybe it'll take you 6 months, but putting in this number of hours is going to be necessary for you just to be competitive, or else
Yeah,
you've just wasted your money. If I'm just being
completely.
honest, yeah,
Completely. And this is the thing. Like, Eileen's got the data because she was, an ex engineer turned into recruiter and all the rest. So she's
yep.
got it for tech. It, and the reality is, this has been known for decades because I think it was in the 80s, a study came out that showed clearly how the average fifth grader in the 80s was about 20 times smarter on paper than a person of the same age 80 years prior,
Oh my God.
which makes sense.
It makes it's kind of crazy to think, but I
Dude,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, it makes
it
sense
makes
though,
sense.
right?
And so,
Yeah.
and then in the noughties and the early 2000s again, it came out that actually I think 2012 or something, and I was reading one of the books on poker psychology, and it talks about the top 20 poker players on average in 2015 were way better than the top 20 poker players on average in the 90s.
Oh wow.
Okay, but this is true in sports. You look at the
Yeah,
kind
you're
of
right.
things
Yeah.
skateboarders do now. You
Yeah.
look at the kind of things people can do in extreme
Yeah.
sports, things that were impossible 40 years ago and now mainstream.
I see my son on his bike and I'm like, "What? How are you doing this?" Like, it would have blown everybody's minds 30 years ago when I was riding a bike and watching him do this stuff. I'm like, "This is nuts." And all his friends do it too. It's like, yeah, the
Yeah,
bar just gets risen. It just keeps it just keeps rising
because
exponentially higher.
correct, because knowledge is much more fluid, right? So if
Mhm.
you want it, it's always been there. And now that somebody else has set the bar, you know what's possible. This is what I call in the program the banister effect, right? People thought it was medically impossible to run the 4-minute mile. They thought your heart would explode. Roger Bannister was a doctor, he was a medical person. And he
Uh-huh.
said, "Oh, I'm not so sure about that." And he's going against the medical orthodoxy of his day, where they said, "You're crazy. Your heart's going to explode in your chest." And he's like, Not so sure. I think I'll try it out anyway." And he did it. And when he did it, so a barrier that had not been broken in humanity's history before that got broken more than 10,000 times in the next 5 years, including by high school kids.
Oh my God.
The only thing that's changed is people
Yeah.
realize it's possible. So, yeah, 100% it's possible. You just need the plan. And Roger Bannister didn't just say, "I'm going to break the barrier," and run out of his dorm room and start running. He trained for 3 years and kept failing. And then he did it.
And then he killed it.
He
Oh.
believed it. Yeah. And now
That's a
everyone does.
really cool story. That is nuts. Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a runner. 4-minute mile. It's crazy to think that psychological effect of just knowing that it's possible and then
Yeah.
saying, "Boom, I can do it." Now, and I hope people take away ideally an optimistic look. I tend to be pretty optimistic, and I know you do too. Practically optimistic. I'm not one of those like all roses, like, "Oh yeah, it's just gonna you can absolutely do it." But I'm like, you this is a possible path to do. It's just that your expectations need to be aligned with reality
Yeah.
at this point. And so what do you see some of the biggest difference maybe like technically with the expectations now? I mean, I can speak on this too, but like what are you seeing the technical expectations that have increased or are different now in 2025 than even like just say pre-AI, like
Yeah.
there's like a clear divide now. It's like
Oh, that's a big, yeah.
pre-AI and AI. Like, what's different? What do developers need to know now?
So I think more than ever, what I'm seeing is what people think is that, oh, AI makes me better and faster. What they don't realize is it makes everybody better and faster at something, right? So
Mhm.
it's not really a competitive advantage because the playing field is completely flat when it comes to that. The people who have the advantage are the people who know enough to really get phenomenal use cases about AI out of AI, right? Or phenomenal functionality out of AI. So just yesterday, I had lunch with my ex-colleague from Google, and he told me how he is building this thing, and it's made him like 6 times faster. But I said, "Tell me about your prompts," and he's like,
Mhm.
"Oh my god, they are so targeted, they are so
Okay.
controlled because I'm
Mhm.
in control. I am not delegating." I'm not delegating decisions. I'm not delegating design. I'm not none of
Hmm.
that. I'm using it in a very controlled fashion. So what's changed now is that because the overall standard of the market has improved, and don't forget, most people who are making hiring decisions now are, let's say, in their mid 30s in tech. It's a
Yep.
very young industry,
Right. Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Those folks grew up in tech without AI,
Hmm.
and they grew up really cutting their teeth on the old school way of doing it. So their fundamentals are very solid. And I can say this also, some of them, their fundamentals are weak compared to the engineers who grew up in the 90s. Because I've seen these
100%.
guys at Google, right?
Yep.
They cannot use a VS Code ID because they're like, it's too busy. I just want my Vim text editor, right?
Yep.
But they know how everything works at the byte level. Like it's incredible, right?
Yeah.
So every generation gets a little bit softer with the tools,
Hmm.
but more
100%.
productive, but way more productive. And that's
Hmm.
okay. Now, so what's changed now for aspiring developers is because hiring managers are much more sophisticated, like you said, than they were 15 years ago, simply because the industry has matured. Best hiring practices. So 15 years ago, no one was talking about the big tech hiring practices. Now all companies try to adopt the big tech hiring
Adopt those
practices
practice.
because they're
Yeah, that's
plugging in,
crazy.
right? Even if they
Yep.
don't need it, they unfortunately adopt it. What does
Yep.
that do? It makes we've gone from interviews in smaller companies being 2 rounds. Do
It's
we
like
like you?
6.
Can you code? To 6.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a 300% jump right there. I mean, a factor right there, right? Okay. So all of that has changed. And so people can't actually get by with doing less. They need to do a lot more because, like we said just 5 minutes ago, on average, people today are better than they were 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And that has always been the history of humanity in every field, right? And so you can't be less than how people were 10 years ago. You have to be better. And to be
Yeah.
better with the human brain, you need to invest a bit more time in a proper plan.
That's the big one too, because I think that people don't realize. Like I met a really great guy. I don't want to say his name because I hope I'm not being critical at all. But and I've met a few people like this, self-taught, and I respect anybody that's fully self-taught. I mean, I used to claim self-teaching. But I mean, I went to a coding boot camp and I've gone to other programs anyway. Anyway, self-taught dude finally got hired, and took him 3 years. Now, to me, that was still really cool. I mean, amazing that he did it with like zero real like a formal traditional education. At the same time, I saw the mistakes he made because I met him and I saw, what are you learning? And it was everything.
Everything. Yep.
And set him on a more proper path in general. But I just thought, man, imagine if you had a plan, right? Like a vetted plan from somebody that knew what they were doing, you could have reached this destination much quicker. And I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of times what people don't get because they say, I could learn all this stuff myself. I'm like, yes, you absolutely could.
Yeah.
And then I'd wonder, do you want to? Is that a path you really want to take? You know?
And that's, it's funny you raise that. So that's kind of what I ended up putting into the inner circle program because I'm 100% self-taught. But the
Hmm.
person that made the difference for me was my non-technical
Interesting.
coach. And she was the
Okay.
one that got me the results in those 8 months because she said, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're thinking about this as coding is special. It's
Mm,
not. It's
it's
a
not.
skill. It's a
Yeah.
freaking skill. All skills come from the consistent application of directed effort over an unreasonable amount of time, also known as deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Not practice, deliberate practice,
Yeah.
right? So she's like, what are you doing that's so narrow that you will be excellent at it when you apply it for 30 hours? That one thing,
Damn.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's how I've started learning. That's how I did it in 8 months. Is I did the opposite, which we now teach in the inner circle program as the minimum effective dose. That came from her.
Oh, wow. That is really insightful. I mean, I learned this by complete error, and then but learning how to code actually kind of just taught me how to learn, because
Yeah,
now I feel a lot more confident learning. Like I see it spilled over to other areas of my life. Maybe I don't know if exercise or coding was the main lever, but it triggered something inside of me where I'm like, okay, this is how, like, doing these things, having some faith that showing up every day, I'm gonna get better. Because even when I sucked at coding, and I did for years, actually, I mean, I finally, after 11 years, I feel pretty confident as a coder, but still, I mean, it's a long 11 years later. But
yeah,
but yeah, that was the thing, just showing up every day, being consistent. I'm like, I know that this will work if I'm consistent. And then I saw that applied to every area of my life. Then I thought, okay, well, maybe I can do anything.
Yeah.
if I'm consistent. I can probably be good at whatever if I do to some level, right? Like I might not be the best at everything at all, but I'll be decent at everything that I really apply myself to.
And dude, this happens at every level. Let's just share with the folks, okay? Because so Brian and I, we have a coach ourselves. Like coaches have coaches. That's how it always is.
Yeah.
You learn from
Yeah.
people better than you. And so what did Ollie do on our call? We had 4 questions that we thought, oh my God, it's so important. We need to talk to him about.
Yeah. Right.
We just zoned in on one. He like ignored everything else.
Yep. Yep. That was really
That's what
interesting.
works. That's what
Yeah.
works. And just do that one thing till you get it right. There's no point building all these castles in the air till you get each foundation. I mean, everybody tries to build a penthouse before they've got the
Mhm.
ground floor. It's ridiculous. We all do it, right?
Yeah. It is funny. And then I hope people listening to this too, as we kind of close off, is that yes, like this is possible. We're not talking about, even something as difficult as like losing 100 pounds. Actually, it's probably right on par with something like losing 100 pounds or getting a six pack or something like that. This is almost that same level of effort, almost that same idea, the persistence, dedication, and the consistency, and also just knowing what to do. Like I keep thinking about weight loss. I remember losing a bunch of weight a few years ago, and I had been trying for years. I was pretty overweight from like years of abuse, right? And I was like, what do I do? I'll try this weird fad diet I saw on TV. In retrospect, it makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And then I met one dude who just told me, just do this. I paid him a bunch of money and I lost all the weight. I was like, oh, and that was the thing,
And it's
right?
not the thing that everyone talks about in the billboards and the
No.
pamphlets, and it's not that thing, right? But what it is depends on you. And this is
Yeah.
why it's really important for everyone. No two people have the same problem. There are broadly 5 classes of problems that people have. It'll be around mindset psychology, it'll be around time, it'll be around energy, it'll be around beliefs and values, and it'll be around knowing what to do. Like it's these buckets. And everybody is going to have at least 2 out of those 4 or 5 things that are going wrong. And it's not the same from some people have all 5, right? Some people have 3, some people have just 1.
Yeah.
But we cannot know until we spend the time with you saying, okay, this is the reason why you're not likely to succeed. Why do I do the risk factors for every student in the varsity? Is even with the plan, when you're driving
Yeah.
fast on the road, if you have a pothole, you will break your axle. It's not enough to know which way you're going in a car and just keep driving. You need to watch out for those damn potholes and steer around them. Every student, I have to sit with them and say, these are your risk factors. I've gotten to know
Yep.
you over the last, 40, 50 hours. These are your risk factors. Steer around these, right? Here's your plan, but here's your risk factors, right? And that takes time to get to know that. You have to help people steer around. It's, of course, everything's possible. Do the right thing at the right time in the right way. How can you not? It's cause and effect. How can you not get the result?
Yeah, and I think that's the really the most powerful thing that I've seen in the Inner Circle program. It's like it's the consistency. People come out of that first 8 weeks, especially like, and I don't want to sound all hokey and corny, but like people describe it as life changing, and in many ways it is. It's a pretty transformative experience. People go
Yeah.
deeper into their own thoughts, patterns, beliefs, fears, doubts they probably ever have, and getting it out on paper, coming up with a super solid plan. And that's why you see people in the program actually doing the work, which is honestly the secret. Like, if I think of one secret over the years, if people are like, what separates the person that got the job from the person that didn't? I'm like, it's just consistency. It sounds so corny and lame, but I'm like, that's literally it. That is literally the secret sauce.
Yeah. And
I've seen computer science
consistency,
grads fail, and I've seen French fry cooks succeed. It's like,
succeed,
yeah,
100%. And consistency is not just doing the thing, because life is real. It will get in the way. So you have to
yeah,
manage all these balls in the air so that you can be consistent. You have to free yourself to be consistent. And for folks who sort of listen to us and say, oh, you guys know how to do this. These transformative outcomes, it took me 2 years of trial and error to get them. I mean, and this is, because I've been in the program before you and I joined up, 5 years,
hmm,
right? So the first 2 years I wasn't getting these outcomes. I was getting similar outcomes, but it wasn't like this. I had to learn how to coach different types of people around the world in their context with their culture. It was hard because I only knew what I knew at that point in time. I mean, the
yeah,
program is obviously cheaper then as well, but even that took consistent, focused, very, very minimalistic sets of effort, right? And it took 2 years to get to that level. And then for 3 something years now, we've been getting these sort of transformative outcomes. And if people want to look at it, they can look at it on the Parsity website. All the videos have been, put up there. but people will just talk and tell you what they've went through. And it's, who was it who said that how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? The inverse
Yeah.
of that is when you fix some of the fundamental patterns in your life, all other outcomes will improve. All, right? People in the
Hmm.
program have had better results with their therapists. They've had better results fitness wise. They've had better sleep. They've had better relationships with their partners and their family while learning to cook.
Yeah,
Because
that's
when
the really pretty incredible part. I think that's a it's a really unique program in that way. I mean, I've never seen really anything like it. And the results show. I mean, it's nice to see people like that's the thing. It's like that solves actually the hardest problem because curriculum has
yeah,
never been the hardest problem. It's always been
no,
getting people
it's
like
never.
do the
Yeah,
thing and don't quit before you
yeah,
get the result that
right.
you want.
And then we have a bunch of people who, get their job offers, they win hackathons, they go and, they work as, tech leads in tiny startups. All of that happens too. But of course, it's going to happen when you fix the cause, the effects will follow. Like it's just physics, you know.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Man, really wonderful conversation. I always enjoy speaking with you. Thanks a lot, Zubin. Any last words before we take off?
No, I suppose I'd just tell people that, don't let AI fool you into thinking that it's easier. It's different.
Hmm.
The industry will change. All knowledge work is going to change, but the future will belong to people. And this is a good thing for career changes. There was a time when all you had to be was an uber technical nerd to succeed. I think that era is gone. I think
Yeah,
that era is
for
gone.
sure.
I think career changers have a big advantage now because I'm seeing it in my work.
Hmm.
Is if you have other skills, especially the softer skills, because the technical stuff a lot of the hard things can be done with the AI with the right supervision. And supervision is a human skill. It's not a machine skill, right? That's why we have supervised machine learning. It's because they can't supervise themselves. We need to supervise them. So if we get good at those sort of judgment skills and combine that with technical skills, I genuinely believe the future software engineer is a very well-rounded personality.
100%. Yeah, I could not agree more. Excellent take. Thanks again, man.
Thank you, dude.
Do it. Just subscribe. You know you got to do it.